Hello, athletes and fans of bodybuilding. Terrick Guindy with the Mr. Olympia. Today, I have my co-host, Bob Cicherillo. He is the 2000 Mr. USA. He's the voice of bodybuilding, the Arnold Classic Master of Ceremony. He is also the Olympia Master of Ceremony, and he's the host of VOB, Voice of Bodybuilding, the most controversial, hated by Dave Palumbo channel in the history of bodybuilding.
Thank you, Terrick. I take that as a badge of honor, my friend. It tells me I'm doing something right.
Thank you. Also with us, I'm going to go on record and say this, okay? He is the best Canadian bodybuilder in the history of Canada. He's won 6 pro shows. The next bodybuilder from Canada to win more shows only has 2. So Iain Valliere is the best bodybuilder in the history of Canadian bodybuilding. And I already sent an email to Ron Hash. They're going to build a statue for him in Ottawa.
Nice.
I'll take it. I'll take it all. This is great. This sounds great. Keep going. Let's keep going with this. This is good.
And he just won the Toronto Super Show. He won in Vancouver. He wins in the Northern Territories. He wins in Tampa. He takes Steve Kuclo out of the Olympia every year. His name is Iain Valliere. How are you?
Good, man. Thanks for having me.
Is there a rivalry between you and Steve Kuclo or no?
No, I mean, that year heading into Texas, I did said on some interviews, I was using Steve kind of as a measuring stick for myself. At that time, the first Olympia before that, I'd never really stepped, on stage with any guys that had placed as high the Olympia as Steve had in regular season shows. So I'd said, I was looking forward to stepping next to Steve and seeing kind of, using him as a measuring stick going into the Olympia. And that show obviously turned out really well for me. So no, definitely no rivalry. I mean, Steve's a great guy. I mean, I got nothing but nice things to say about Steve. But that was just what I was using him for at the time, is kind of see where I was stacking up in that world of bodybuilding,
So Bob, there was the Texas Pro Show. Steve Kuclo was waiting the entire year to do that show. Iain Valliere had already won his qualification, but then he said, let me buy my flight to Dallas and make sure Steve Kuclo doesn't show up at the Olympia. What do you think about that?
Listen, I got to give Ian credit. He's so far, he's playing the game better than anybody else and picking qualifying shows going in. He gets his qualification every year, and he gets it early. He's not beating his head against the wall, as we're probably going to see, 4 or 5 top-name guys in Tampa all trying for one spot. So, Ian, the good thinking on the strategy and the actual business of bodybuilding. But listen, this is a professional sports, man. I mean, you can never take for granted that somebody's going to show up. Whether they're in shape, they can either qualify, they want to put a paycheck in their pocket or a title behind their name. So good for you, Ian.
Thank you.
Also joining us, he is the 1992 Mr. USA's 4-time Arnold Classic champion, the legend himself, the Sultan of Symmetry, Flex Wheeler. Good afternoon, Flex. How are you?
I'm doing great, gentlemen, and my apologies. I'm out and about, so my internet might not be too well. So accept my apologies and my tardiness.
No worries.
I was combing my hair, and the advice that Bob gave me didn't work out for me, so that's why I'm late.
Well, you can comb your hair with a sponge, bro.
That's not right.
Hey, I have a question for you guys. When I joined the gym in 1994 in São Paulo, Brazil, there were pictures on the wall of the great bodybuilders. Flex Wheeler. There was Chris Cormier. Bob, you were a little bit later on, so we didn't have pictures of you on the wall, but it was Mohamed Makawi, Chris Cormier, and the Canadian bodybuilder that was in more evidence than any other was Paul Dillette. It turns out that Paul Dillette only won 2 pro shows, if I'm not mistaken. Is that correct, Bob?
I believe that is correct, sir, yes.
This guy here, by the name of Iain Valliere, has won 6. I want to go on record. I'm calling him the greatest Canadian bodybuilder of all times. Bob Cicherillo, is Iain Valliere the greatest Canadian bodybuilder of all times?
Well, the answer lies in the question itself, and it's not against Paul Dillette or Henderson Thorne or any other somebody we would consider great out of Canada. I guess the question these days would be who's the best Canadian bodybuilder? Is it Chris Bumstead or Iain Valliere?
Wow.
The family against each other.
Yeah.
Well, I'm going to tell you this. I think Iain Valliere is the better bodybuilder than Chris Bumstead. And I'm going to tell you this. I went to shoot for Olympia TV, and I asked Chris Bumstead, I said, Chris, how did you get in this sport? And he said, man, I was a skinny little kid, and then I joined the gym, and I saw this huge guy, this massive guy at the gym, and this guy eventually started dating my sister, and that's what got me into bodybuilding. I wanted to be that big guy. So
Wow.
as many titles as Chris Bumstead has, or as many accomplishments as he has, the guy who actually inspired Chris Bumstead to pursue bodybuilding is right here. His name is Iain Valliere.
Thank you.
Yeah, listen, not only is that a pretty cool story, but I don't know if Chris has 6 titles to his credit. I know he's got some Olympia victories there, but he pretty much hit the ground running into the winner's circle there. What's
We're
that?
tied as of now because he has 4 Olympia wins and 2 pro show wins. So we both.
There you go.
But I think his 4 Olympia wins trump all my wins by a large margin there. So
Well, he's trumping a whole lot of people right now. But listen, keep at it, buddy, because not only have you been consistent, but you consistently make progress. And I know you want to better that 7th place finish you had. Was it last year, the year before at the Olympia?
yeah, 2020 and 2021, I was 7th both years. Yeah,
That's right. Yep.
Gentlemen, correct me if I'm wrong. If Chris Bumstead wins the Classic Physique, he's the Olympia Classic Physique champion. If Iain Valliere wins the Mr. Olympia, he is forever Mr. Olympia.
Yeah, the titles are different, but I mean, I think what honestly I would love to see. I'd love to see Chris do an open show at some point. I don't know if it's on his radar, but it would be really fun to me and Chris do an open show one time together. We did compete. He did compete as open bodybuilder as an amateur. He did turn pro as an open bodybuilder, won the heavyweights at North America, and that's how he initially turned pro. And then the classic division came out in 2016. He switched over, but I got one. I'm 1-0 against Chris because I won the overall that year, so I'm 1-0. I'm taking that to the grave with me.
Would you like him to do an open show with you so you can beat the crap out of him?
I don't know at this point. With Hani behind him, I'm not feeling too confident about it. So we'll hold off on that till I'm in my later years, so I at least have an excuse of like, I'm 38, I'm 40, it's whatever,
Well, hang on, Flex. I got a question for you, my friend. You competed against and with Paul Dillette. If you were to take Iain Valliere's mindset and implant it into the genetics of Paul Dillette, how many Olympias would he have won?
Oh my gosh, jeez. I mean, Paul was just, God dang it. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah, Paul was just a freak. But yeah, I mean, a lot of this is mindset. Obviously Paul was his weakest body part was his back and his posing, where that isn't a problem with Ian. So of course, that would be a crazy matchup. Even if you go back to some other Canadian bodybuilders like Nimron King, and I think Raul Javier was from Canada also.
Renal
Javier, yeah.
Well, can you guys hear me right now? I'm going to tell you this. This guy has won 6 pro shows, Bob. I don't think he gets enough credit. We often go and talk about bodybuilders. How many of the pros have won 6 pro shows? I think Iain Valliere is highly underrated in pro bodybuilding today.
Well, like I said earlier, Ian's smart enough to pick, he picks and chooses his shows very wisely. People forget, and we've talked about this many times, all of us, there's a business to bodybuilding. Right now, this guy's completely blowing it. I'll give you a really good example, okay? This weekend, I will be in Orlando for the Orlando Pro. Got an open pro men's show. The leading name is Hassan, okay? Not to take anything away from him. I believe he won last year, actually. So I think he's defending the title, if I'm not mistaken. But you're hard-pressed. There's a few other names. I think Stanimal's on there, and Eric Rodriguez, and I don't know any of the other. There's 15 guys. I don't know 13 of them. Okay, now that's not like I'm not paying attention or out there. I mean, I'm pretty much in the marketplace, but it just shows you there's no top names. Okay, there's no potential Olympians. I shouldn't say potential. There's no previous Olympians in that lineup. But we do know there's at least 3 or 4 names out there that still have to qualify. Why are none of them in Orlando? That is the $1 million question. But I'm telling you, boys, mark my words. You're going to get to Tampa, and all of those guys will be in. They'll all be beating each other up for one spot. And like I say, Ian's just smarter. He's just smarter than these guys when it comes to the actual business and picking a show to win and to qualify. These shows are open to anybody. It's not like he's skirting these guys or he's shying away from competing against them. And Ian, if I'm not mistaken, you're not one to keep things secret either. You put out there, hey, I will be at this show to compete. Come one, come all.
Yeah, no, I mean, I announced the show that I was going to do at the beginning of the year. I picked that show and I stick to it. Obviously my history and, showing up at Texas with Steve, I'm not trying to skirt away from anybody. And the reality of it is I know that what matters is the Olympia. And if I don't get there, if I,
that's right.
run around doing a million shows and flying here and there, making my body tired to just try and get there, well, now I've done myself a disservice when we get to the real stage that matters. And, if I want to go toe to toe with these guys, like you talk about Texas, you're going to have Hunter, you're going to have Andrew Jack. I mean, you're going to have a bunch of these guys, Blessing. I mean, a bunch of these guys that were Olympia guys last year, 2 of them being top 10 Olympia guys. It's going to be a tough road for a lot of guys. So, I just want to get my qualification in. If someone great shows up, that's great. I mean, I'm more than welcome to, welcome any competitors. But I pick my show, I stick to it. And I've been, blessed enough to be 5-0 over the last 3 or 4 years,
Well, Ian, what do you consider? Bob Cicherillo made a thumbnail, which he had to apologize, saying, is this competitor a bust or a threat? And, he had to apologize.
Here, by the way, too, and, we spoke about this, but me or James, right, these guys, we took no offense to this. I mean, I think the internet gets more fired up than we do about this. Bodybuilding is a subjective sport, and it's a sport about analysis and critique. I mean, I don't take any offense to Bob, who is a professional in this, in this sport, giving his 2 cents or giving his critique. And I think, having good thumbnails is part of getting views on YouTube. So
wait a minute. I wasn't even on that show. What show are you talking about?
That wasn't you. That wasn't you.
It was me that did it. It was me that
you.
did it.
Yeah, hey, take your own bullshit here, bro. I wasn't even.
You're the most hated guy in the internet, along with your brother Sean Ray. Just keep on adding on.
Hey, listen, Ian's right there. He gets more hits than anybody I see currently. So.
Yeah.
No, Ian last year he beat Antoine Vaillant in Vancouver, and then he beat Hassan Mustafa this year. No matter what he does, every time he wins, there's controversy. What do you think about this, Ian?
I think it's a couple things. I think one, I invite it because I am a very outspoken person, with the podcast we do, and I do put my opinions out there as well. So I think when you give them, people like to give them back to you a little harder. And I think also the more you're in the spotlight, the more you get it. I mean, you see it with even guys like Hunter. He gets a lot of, negativity sometimes. You see with a lot of these guys, it's not, necessarily because people don't like their physique or they don't think they're winning. It's just, more eyes on you, more it is. And I think I also, like I said, invite it with putting my opinions out there a little unfiltered. It's just, you invite that kind of stuff. So it just kind of is what it is, right?
Yeah. I
agree. We have tons of people that first, they don't do anything. They don't say anything, and they want to live their life like this. Oh, listen, I want to be on the other side. I want to say what I think. I want to make mistakes. I want to apologize if I make mistakes, but I don't want to live my life without having the freedom to say what I instinctively think is the right thing at that point.
Listen, I gotta be honest, boys. Okay, the pussification of the world continues. Okay, people.
You just
today,
say pussification.
It's a good word.
I think that's a word. If it's not, I'm making an official word. Yes, but yeah, thank you. Listen, the fans today, and I hate to say this, because I hate to be that guy. I hate to be like the old school guy that's always got to be bitching about everything new and back in the day and all that. But here's the bottom line: you literally can't say anything today without these fans, quote, coming out with any type, just these obnoxious comments. I mean, Ian, I see your stuff all the time, and yeah, you're outspoken, but you put your stuff out there, but nothing's like crazy. And these people they're like a pit bull on a bone. Like, you can't critique anybody these days. Here's a good example, right? Earlier in the year, I came out and I did that piece on Big Ramy. And I said, listen, he probably needs to address some things. There's clearly some issues going on. He probably needs to take care of that and then see where he's at. Maybe you take a year off and see where you're, or maybe you continue on, right? That's pretty much what I said. I got blasted for this, right? From everybody and their mother. Chad Nichols goes out and says the exact same thing. He gets nothing. Big Steve came out and said the exact same thing, almost verbatim. He got nothing. So it literally just depends on who you are. And if you're Ian and you're outspoken and you're out there, he's going to say something, they're going to jump on it. Somebody else is going to say something, nothing.
Well, I think. Sorry, I'll just interject here. I think a reason why I get it a lot too is because I'm still competing against a lot of these guys. So when I go on the podcast, you know I got a lot of flack for it last year for giving critiques on Andrew Jack's conditioning when he won Texas last year. Look, I'll be the first to say Andrew in person and on stage is one of the most impressive bodybuilders I've seen in my life. I said that even at the time. But to give a critique of saying he needs to improve his conditioning, which everyone could agree upon, you know, but then people will be like, yeah, but he's going to beat you. He's going to do this. I'm not comparing himself to me. I'm giving a judgment on him and him alone. This isn't me saying I'm better than him or anything of the sort. You know, this is me being on a podcast and me giving my critique of a bodybuilder. You know, and I think a lot of the fans do like to see that, but there's obviously people that are fans of these athletes that do get upset about these critiques. And then these are also the people that come back, you know, when I do a show and they'll be like, man, you suck. You know, this guy's going to beat you. This guy's going to beat you. It's like, great. You're open to your opinion. That's fine. You know?
Now, you know, we had some fans here. I got some questions here from the fans. I want to give credit to Jeremiah Hall. He's a huge fan of the channel. You know, he loves your physique. There's high expectations, sure. But at the Olympia, you didn't come through. Another competitor is asked, another fan here, H. Dow, what improvements did Ian make this year? In what place at the 03-23 does he rate himself? Ian, talk a little bit about your experience at last year's Olympia. Obviously, we were expecting, everybody was expecting you on the first call out based on what you have done, but things did not come that way. What happened at the 2022 Mr. Olympia?
Yeah, I mean, look, you know, I'm not going to sit here and list off a million issues, but, you know, I had some small peak, you know, issues, you know, that didn't quite come through with water and sodium manipulation. But I think the bigger thing here was I just got into my own head. You know, I let the moment get the better of me. You know, I was a little scrambled going into into prejudging. And I posed like a complete moron, you know, and I think I didn't display the best of my physique even remotely. You know, I came out, I hit, you know, barely any shots to really showcase my physique in a great way. You know, I was very clunky with my posing. And that initial view that the judges see of you, especially at the Olympia, when there's guys that are top notch and can pose well and display their physique. I mean, you saw how Samson came out last year. He came out like a fucking wrecking ball, just stomping on stage, you know, and that draws your attention. I mean, you're a judge, you see that confidence, you see that poise on stage, and it draws you to them. You want to see more, it's attractive. And, you know, I just didn't have that last year. I didn't believe that how I looked that day was going to be competitive. You know, I knew we'd made some mistakes in the last day or two that were going to, you know, that had hindered my look. And I didn't have the self-confidence. Look, that was an absolute learning experience, that it's fake it till you make it. Even if you don't think you're looking your best, fucking act like you do. But, you know, it's learning, you know, tough lessons that you learn. And unfortunately, the Olympia was the place I had to learn it, not at a Toronto Pro or something. But, you know, it is what it is, right? You go moments. And
let me ask you this, because you just said something I want to key on into the psyche of the you know, one of the top bodybuilders in the world. Do you think it was a success from the year before that kind of get into your head a little bit? I mean, you're seventh place. If you can be seventh, you can be fifth or fourth or third. I mean, you know, you're right there, right? You're that far from making adjustments to be into that top echelon. And I'm just wondering, from your perspective now, looking back, was it the success that led to the idea of, you know, okay, I'm trying too hard, or, you know, kind of got to you a little bit, the moment was too big? What was it?
Yeah, I mean, that could definitely play into it. I mean, you know, when you had 2 years of seventh prior, and look, the Olympia lineup last year was not the same lineup as 2020 or 21. It was absolutely improved. You had a lot of new guys there. You had Samson there, Andrew there. You know, you had Terrick in the mix now. You know, I mean, you got, you know, a bunch of new guys right there. And, you know, obviously there probably was some looming fear in my head of like, you know, shit, I'm going to slip places. And that was shown in my presentation on stage. Absolutely. I mean, there's no doubt about it. I mean, if you look how I posed there versus how I posed in Vancouver Pro, you know, it's two completely different bodybuilders, right? And I think that energy is so important at the Olympia. You know, when you see those guys, you see how Terrick comes out, or Samson, like I said, these guys 100%, or Nick, you know, they believe in their heart of hearts that they're there to win this show. And I didn't display that energy. And, you know, I think I got the placing I deserved. And, you know, I just take that and I try and be better this year and try and get some redemption on that placing, right?
Hey, Bob, so, you know, all of us had a lot of expectations on a lot of bodybuilders, but, you know, I actually believe Derek Lunsford, who plays second, and I've been judging Derek since the USA's when he was a middleweight. You know, I even think Derek's conditioning when he won the 212 was better than he was a lot bigger. Samson Dauda was not at his best at the Olympia. Iain Valliere was not at his best. Do you think that the tremendous lineup created a level of excitement and nervousness among all of us, all of them?
Well, Ian just hit it. I mean, he's being very truthful here with the fans, and I hope they appreciate that, because a lot of guys, they'll blame it on other things. Listen, this was a much tougher lineup. Let's face facts. I mean, the last 2 years previous, we're not the best lineups we've seen. We've got some new talent in there, and some of the names you just mentioned. It was going to be a much tougher road. And listen, Ian can hang with anybody out there, but success can be a very problematic thing, because it gives you a level of expectation for yourself. Like I said, if you're, like Nick Walker's a good example, right? Listen, this guy hit the ground running, and he's had two very good successful outings at the Olympia. The pressure you're going to put on yourself at that level is huge, because you don't want to go backwards, but you also have to be able to envision yourself. They talk about stuff in psychology, the fear of success. Okay, and this is what I firmly believe that Kai Green was a victim of this in his career. I don't think Kai could ever envision himself as being Mr. Olympia. If you notice, you always saw two different physiques with Kai Green. You saw him at the Arnold, where he was spectacular and winning titles and putting up a physique that you went, holy crap, this guy's going to beat Phil this year. And then when he got next to Phil on stage at the Olympia, it was never the best Kai that you've seen. Matter of fact, even when Phil was off, Kai was off. Yeah. And I think I don't think he could ever, I think he can envision himself being the Arnold Classic champ, but I don't think he could ever wrap his mind around, I'm going to be Mr. Olympia. I'm going to be the best bodybuilder in the world. And that's where Phil ate his lunch every year, is in the psyche department, not just physically, but I think it does manifest into physical on stage, like Ian just said. So you have to be able to balance both of those things as an elite athlete in any sport. The fear of success versus the fear of failure. And that's where it gets very, very difficult at that level.
No, I absolutely agree. And like you said, believing where you place, and, even me, like I'm an avid track and field fan, and there's some guys that aren't necessarily the best sprinters, but they win all the big championships because guys crack under this and they'll thrive under this pressure, and they win the big races, even when the times are not world record or world leading times, and I think that's one of the main things here is, like Terrick said there, when you have a lineup like this, that's dramatically different than the year before. You got a lot of new faces. You got guys that are, a little fearful of slipping in their spots. It does create a different level of pressure for sure.
Well, if you look at Andrew Jack, I think he expected to be on the first call out. He wasn't. Samson Dauda was holding water. He was a lot better at the Arnold. I think the conditioning of Derek looked bigger and impressive, but I even think Derek Lunsford looked better conditioned when he won the 212 than his second place at the Olympia. Brandon Curry was holding a little bit of water. Fifth place, Big Ramy, he wasn't at his best. Hunter Labrada, he wasn't at his best. We saw that consistently at the 2022 Mr. Olympia, and then we saw a lot of these guys at the Arnold or after shows, and they performed better.
Well, I think, I'll just add to this, and I think this is even a greater point, because you look at guys that didn't necessarily have that expectation of that pressure. There's a great example is Rafael Brandao. This is his first Olympia. He had no expectations. He wanted to come in there and make a splash. He looked awesome. He was at his best, and he got himself a top 10. And that was a guy that, a lot of people had kind of touted for that, but him himself, having not been there and having that expectation, came in with a fresh mindset of just like, I'm going to come there and show the people what I'm made of. And he wound up with an amazing placing, right?
Yeah, no, Rafael was extremely happy. I mean, his goal was, man, if I break top 10, that would be the best thing in my life. And he was able to do it. Now, going back to your victory in Toronto, I wasn't there judging, but I thought it was very convincing, your win. And I love Hassan Mustafa. I think he has all the mass in the world. But one of the things about Hassan Mustafa is he's got all the mass. There's a little bit of Paco Batista, right, Bob?
Yeah. You know what? He's very similar, except let me tell you something. If he had Paco's conditioning, he would be in a lot of trouble. But, Ian, I got to laugh because I wasn't in Toronto. I obviously saw the pictures and the video like everybody else did. But all this, fanfare out there of, Hassan got screwed, this and that, whatever, right? This was the easiest one, too, I've seen this year. With all due respect to Hassan, he's a very good bodybuilder, but he's a little on the short side. He's very up and down. He doesn't have a very good taper to his physique. He's got a lot of muscle, but he tends to come in very, very soft. And one of your attributes, Ian, is you bring the conditioning, to go with your physique, and you brought it here. And listen, I know it's not a conditioning contest either. We talk about this all the time. But when you add up all the factors, it was an easy 1-2. This was not close, in my opinion. This was not, could have gone either way. You could have flipped a coin. If you know bodybuilding, and this is where I have a problem sometimes with the people out there, that they don't know bodybuilding. They don't know what they're looking at. And we try to teach these things. We try to school the people, if you will. What are the judges looking at? How do you assess these two physiques? We're looking at this picture right now. Now, if anybody looks at this picture, I know this isn't a one pose competition, but if anybody looks at this picture and doesn't have Ian beating Hassan easily, you don't know what you're looking at.
Yeah, no, look, Hassan looked awesome, and he was absolutely up in muscularity from when he won Orlando last year. And his wife told me he was up 20 pounds. But, I think and look, I've been at the highest levels with these guys and seen some muscular guys. And when you talk about muscle through the arms, delts, chest, I mean, Hassan is one of the biggest humans that you'll ever find in terms of that level of muscularity. So he looked great. I'm excited to see him in Orlando if he can bring that condition down a little more. There's great things there, but I think just bring that conditioning and controlling that stomach, which are things that I'm very good at, is keeping my stomach controlled, and my conditioning is usually pretty good. So and look, I don't want to sit here and defend my win by any means. I think I deserve the win completely. But anyone knows that watching something in person versus on a live stream is a different thing. Bob, you've stood at the side stage at the biggest shows in the world countless times and seen those guys 5 feet away from you and seen how crazy they look. I'm sure you've seen pictures and you're like, this did not look like the same thing. And look, I understand this is what the fans see and they can only judge from what they see. But I won with a perfect score for a reason. And that wasn't because of some sort of favoritism. That was because the judges all saw it in a certain way, right?
Well, I'll tell you this. I have friends and people that I respect a lot in the bodybuilding community. And they have their YouTube channel, and they had a guest there who was one of the great 212 guys. And I had just judged Charles Griffin against Mohammed Shaban at the California Pro. And Charles Griffin won convincingly. It was unanimous. I love Mohammed. I love Charles. I've known these guys. I saw Charles turning pro. But it was a unanimous decision. I was there. Everybody judged for Charles in first. And even Mohammed said, yeah, I think he got me. But then some of the shows in the East Coast, they're saying how this could have gone either way. And I'm like, and these are people that I love and respect. But it's very hard for anybody to judge a show. And I'm a judge myself. That's why sometimes I even call guys that were judging those shows before I even look at the pictures, because they'll give me the right assessment of what happened.
Well, let's be serious here. If it was easy to judge a show over a live stream, we wouldn't have judges flying all over the damn planet for every show to do this. I mean, you think Tyler's got an easy job flying from here to there every weekend? Like, if it was that easy, let's just sit at a computer, we'll watch the live stream, judge the show, go on to the next one. It's obviously a very different thing being there in person. And I think the things that you miss, and I think this is one of the things that I get critiqued for the most when people, will say these things of me not deserving wins. I think that the level of conditioning, the dryness, the hardness that I have doesn't translate onto video the same. Where when you have someone like Hassan with gigantic muscle, huge levels of muscularity, that is always seen on a video. You can always see that, where the fine details, the conditioning, the thinness of the skin, the separation, the detail like that isn't always translated when you see it on a video, right? So certain things are and certain things aren't. And I think for me, when I have that, very fine, grainy, skin, it doesn't always translate the same. So people will think I'm in worse condition than I am, or comparable condition to the guy that was second that might not have been in comparable condition,
Okay, we have a segment here, Ian, which is called Losing Followers, Making Enemies. Your boy, Nick Walker, and I know you guys are close. I love Nick. Nick said, Big Ramy is done. Yes or no? Do you agree with him?
Done in what? Like in terms of winning the Olympia again, or done again as in terms of being competitive?
In terms of winning the Olympia.
I don't believe Ramy will win the Olympia again. Do I still think Ramy has a career ahead of him, making money and being a competitive pro bodybuilder? Absolutely. I don't think that you need to be winning the Olympia to be making 6-figure contracts and being a competitive bodybuilder. He can still win shows. He can still do well at the Arnold's. Like he was still, a top 5 guy at the Arnold. He's getting a good paycheck. He's still getting good contracts. And look, even when he was off, he was in the top 5 at the Olympia. That's absolutely nothing to, snuff at, right? So, I still think Ramy is absolutely a top tier bodybuilder and will continue to be for a few years. But do I think he's going to win the Olympia again? I do not. Great answer. I mean, I'm going to vote for you instead of Justin Trudeau.
Well, your boy Nick Walker said, Samson Dauda's back is flat as a board. Do you agree? Yes or no?
I don't think I agree with that. I think, I think of all the attributes Samson has, his back is not his strongest point. But in terms of when you see the trajectory and the improvement Samson making show to show, year to year, I don't think that's going to be the case for a long time. I think even when you look from, bring the conditioning in a little more from the Olympia to the Arnold, it did show his back a lot better. I think for a back to really look good, your conditioning does have to be excellent. And I think if he continues to improve that conditioning, keep improving the muscularity, I don't see it being a problem for him. I think, look, is it as good as Derek Lunsford's back? No, but like whose is, So,
nobody.
Yeah.
Well, hold on now. Hadi Choopan on the lat spread has more thickness than Derek Lunsford.
Sure, maybe on the back lat, I'd give Derek more width, but I think when you talk about thickness and muscularity, I'd give that to Hadi. But on the back double, Derek is
the back double. Derek Lunsford's clavicles are extremely large,
crazy,
and it goes into. And the more he gains muscle, he can get. But I had Derek Lunsford winning the back double biceps, but I did not have him winning the back lat spread because Hadi Choopan had tremendous thickness on the back. And listen, I don't think Derek Lunsford was at his best conditioning. I think the 212, when he won the 212, was his best conditioning, which shows his potential coming up in 2023.
Yeah, I think it's sorry to interrupt. I think it's a hard line to balance too when you're coming from competing at the 212 where you're really, really, really pushing down to get into that weight cap. Like, look, making 212 sure shit wasn't easy for Derek, those last few years. Where now it's like, okay, I got no weight cap. I can display as much muscularity as I possibly can. And I'm going to step on stage with guys like Ramy and Samson and Andrew and Nick that are fucking gigantic, So I think you need to ride that line. And I think he did play his cards right last year. I think maybe if he'd come in a little harder and looked a little smaller, especially through the legs, Nick is a prime example of this. He pulled his conditioning in a fair bit from the Olympia to the Arnold, and he actually lost to guys that he beat at the Olympia. So more conditioning, I don't think is always better. In the case of Derek, I think him and Hadi played his cards right for the Olympia. But now as he gets some more muscle maturity and some more density to that muscle, and he's held on to it a little longer because he hasn't been pushing down to 212 and can do real off seasons, I think we'll start to see that conditioning come out more and more and more.
Now, Bob, you already said publicly that Ramy is done, and millions and millions of Egyptians have sent you direct messages. You will not be emceeing a show in Cairo anytime soon. Now, when it comes to Samson Dauda, Nick Walker said his back. Now, credit to Nick. He said he's a monster from the front. Yeah. He said his back is flat as a board. Do you agree with that statement, or you think Nick is being a little bit too harsh on his counterpart, Samson Dauda?
I mean, listen, Nick's being Nick, and I appreciate that because I love these guys, especially him, he's not shy about making comments. And I mean, listen, is he literally flat as a board? No, and he better hope he's not flat as a board because he beat him with that flat as a board back. So that's not very good for Nick if that's the case. Listen, Samson can use some improvement from the back. There's no question about it. But that's not really his Achilles heel in this whole thing. As I've said many, many times, I hate the adage, shows are won from the back. Not only are they not won from the back, but if they are won from the back, then they can be lost from the front. Shows are won from the back, the front, the side, in transition, in your free posing, much to Milos's credit, and all that stuff, right? Bodybuilding shows are won at that level over a 2-day span. So, to just chalk it up to us a contest of who's got the best back, well, you might as well just give it to Derek Lunsford right now because he is the best back by far of any bodybuilder that's out there in any division.
We would have had Joel Stubbs with 10 Olympia wins,
Yeah, I mean, it's exactly right, Ian. So, I get what Nick's doing, and that's cool, but Nick better pray to the gods above, hanging out with Joe Weider up there in that big gym in the sky. Because if Samson nails his conditioning, and I was the first one to say this, this past year at the Olympia and through the Arnold. if Samson nails his conditioning 100%, if everybody showed up 100% on game day, let's just go with that, then Samson's your new Mr. Olympia.
I agree.
Hold on. There's a fan insulting me. Let me add.
What do you
Terrick,
say?
are you permanently
Man.
bulking?
Perma-bulking.
Absolutely. I am getting
Always.
fatter as the years go by. I'm happy. I eat ice cream with my kids. And if you want to see my abs, I'll get into the X-ray machine for you. We got a question here. So your boy Nick Walker said Hunter Labrada is going back to the top 5 at the Olympia. Bob, I'll start with you.
Yeah.
Nothing better than go against the All-American Hunter Labrada, so you can lose even more followers in your life. Yes or no?
Love Hunter. He's going to have a very difficult time making a top 5 this year with these new names that have been added. If we just go down the list right now, okay? Now, let's assume for sake of conversation, because we have no idea at this point, but let's assume Big Ronnie's in, okay? Listen, like Ian said, listen, he may have fallen a few notches. He's not at his all-time best, but he's still very formidable. He's still big. He's still got a lot of muscle. His conditioning was probably the best it's been at the Arnold. So you got Big Ronnie to contend with. You got Hadi Chupan. That's 2. Okay. You got Nick Walker. That's 3.
Derek.
You got Derek Lunsford. That's 4. So, and now you've got.
I think the real test here is going to be in Texas or wherever him and Andrew are competing against each other, because those guys were one spot apart at the Olympia.
Correct.
Hunter just edged out Andrew. So, that could really be your battle for, making in that top 5 right there, right?
Now, Ian, you have a rivalry.
We don't want to count him out, but I mean, the point, listen, he's been there, okay? He's been as high as what, 4th? So he does have the capabilities of doing it. But like we talked about at the beginning of the show, the field is a lot stronger right now than it was a couple of years ago. And again, he's going to have his work cut out. Hunter would have to be 100%. And more importantly, Hunter has a habit of coming out and he is just pouring water. He's got to figure out, notably, what he has to do to not be releasing so much water in that first round. I mean, he must have gone off the stage 3 times to towel off. And once the water released, he did look a lot sharper. But by then, at the Olympia level, it's almost too late. He's got to figure out what he can do to come in drier right off the bat. And then he would have a legitimate shot at placing in that 4th, 5th range.
Ian Valliere, what's your record against Hunter? You guys went against each other at the Tampa Pro a few years back.
I think he's 3 to my 1. So I beat him at the 2020 Olympia. He beat me at the 2022 Olympia and the 2021 Olympia and at Tampa. So he's won 3, I've won 1.
Well, you see how they keep record against each other. I like that.
Hey, keep in mind, but we didn't even mention Brandon Curry in that mix, who's a former Mr. Olympia. You can't count him out either.
Oh, Nick Walker said Brandon Curry is not making the top 5.
Yeah, well, listen, believe it when I see it. You can't count Brandon. Listen, if you were able to win an Olympia title, then you did. Then listen, the ball's in your court as to what he brings and how competitive he is. But you have to put him in that conversation of a first call out.
Yeah, especially with Brandon, because I mean, look, you have the conversation about Ramy. You can sit here and be like, okay, the triceps or the back or these things. You don't really have any of those things to say with Brandon.
No.
His physique is still as fresh as it ever was. The muscle's all there. I think if he hits the nail on the head, he can absolutely still be right up in that group. No problem.
Yeah.
Well, here's the deal, Ian. You are, in my opinion, I think I'm going to put that on record. You're the greatest Canadian bodybuilder of all times. You disappointed at the 2022 Mr. Olympia because everybody, including the judges, everybody knew that Iain Valliere was a great bodybuilder coming up.
Yep.
Here's the question to you. Will you ever allow yourself to be out of the top 10 at the Mr. Olympia?
Well, I was last year, and I'm really hoping not to be again. I know what needs to be improved, and I'm going to do my absolute damn best to make sure that, any little things that have, been issues with my physique or been critiqued on my physique are as improved as humanly possible come November. And after that, I kind of let the chips fall where they may. I can't control how good everybody else comes in. But I know that I can absolutely be better than I was last year. And I think if I am better than I was last year, I can absolutely be back in that top 10. I have no doubt about that in my mind whatsoever. So, I'm going to work till November and keep improving and try and get back where I feel I belong. Right.
Terrick, Ian might very well be the best Canadian bodybuilder that's ever walked the earth. However, I think you might agree. He's probably not the most popular. I believe that's got to go to our good friend Jocelyn Pelletier from years ago.
No, the most popular one, without any doubt, is Chris Bumstead.
Okay, wait, but do we consider Chris Bumstead a bodybuilder?
Yeah, we're talking open bodybuilding here, just open body. So let's not put classic in there. It's a whole different division. But if we're going by men's open bodybuilding, you got to put Jocelyn Pelletier in there as the most popular. This guy brought down any house he was ever in New York City, brought the night of the champions.
But I'm going to tell you this. I know the Bumstead family very well, okay? And I know Chris Bumstead is the most popular in the house. The most accomplished one is Iain Valliere because he inspired Chris Bumstead to start his bodybuilding career, okay? The best genetics, Courtney King was, an incredible, a doll on stage. The best genetic in that household is none of these three people I've mentioned. Is Melissa Bumstead in figure. She's the best genetics out of all of them. I've judged Melissa Bumstead and her ratio between, her V taper and everything. She's the most genetic out of all of them.
I would agree there. I mean, and for her, like the rate that this girl can grow muscle and is just like unparalleled. She could be natural her whole career and she would be still, having to not train half her body because she would be grown out of that figure division. Like there's, it's super fast. So, I mean, crazy waist, crazy shoulders, insane ratios, and, just an absolute freak of nature with her genetics, right?
But yeah, I judged her and I said, man, and I don't even think when I judged her, Chris Bumstead had won a single Olympia. He was just there with her, helping her out. And I saw her genetics and I said, this girl is a freak, bro. I think is she retired?
She is retired now. Yeah.
She's just defending you on the internet when you call trouble.
It's a full-time job.
Yeah. She's defending me at home, keeping my head screwed on straight while I'm losing my marbles online,
Okay. I asked Chris Bumstead, I said, why does Ian get in so much fight in the internet? And Chris said, Terrick, he gets bored. He goes on the internet and starts fighting with everybody.
That is the truth. Yes. I've tried to refrain myself just for my own mental sanity, but a lot of that stems out of boredom. That's for damn sure.
Well, I live vicariously through you, Ian. I would love to do that, but I can't. Bob Ciccarillo, where does Ian fall at the 2023 Mr. Olympia? Since you are the Bobstradamus, where does Ian Valliere fall on the 2023 Mr. Olympia?
I think Ian's got the eye of the tiger back. I don't think he likes being out of that top 10 one bit. He got a taste of that top 7 couple of years in a row. And let me tell you something, it's real comfortable to be sitting there when you're knocking on the door of the top 5. So I'm going to go on. Bob Stradamus says that Ian will rebound this year, and he's got a legitimate shot up there to at least take 7th, maybe even sneak into that top 6.
If Ian shows up in condition, poses well, and he hits that side chest, his side chest is incredible. It's my favorite pose. He's got the separation from the legs.
Let's put things in context here, okay? Ian, to your credit, probably your strongest point is that you're very consistent. Even when you've been off, you haven't been that far off. Like you say, last year, not your best, but as you mentioned, but your consistency is what landed you there 2 times in a row at that position. And listen, there's no guarantee. Like I predicted Samson to win the Olympia if, quote, if he comes in 100%. He was 6th last year, okay? So we just got to keep things in context that anybody can fall out of there if you don't bring it on game day, and that can happen to anybody. Listen, right now, Ian, somebody's in your shoes from last year going, holy crap, I could be in that top 5. Well, listen, they got the same nerves you do going into that show. They're looking at you backstage going, holy crap, this guy's in shape. So it's all a mind game when it gets to this level. But if Ian brings his A game on there, he'll be right back up in there. No question about it.
This is his best pose. The separation on the glutes, the hamstrings. Look at the quads are, coming out. He's got huge clavicle bones. In my opinion, this is his best pose. I like the front lat spread, but from the side, Ian Valliere is very powerful.
Thank you. Yeah, no, and there are some things still I think that need to be improved here. I had a little bit of loss of volume on my triceps that I think hurt me on the side chest and the side tri. That can definitely be improved just from a little bit of a nagging elbow issue I was having on that side specifically, which is I think going to be a lot better come the Olympia. So I think if we make some small tweaks there, I'm very confident in my shot to be back in that group at the Olympia for sure.
Sounds good, Bob. Before we go, I want to Ian, Bob Cicherillo, I give tremendous admiration for Bob Cicherillo, because Bob Cicherillo knows the history of the sport. And forever, I asked everybody last year, who's going to win the Mr. Olympia? I asked everybody. People said Big Rami's going to repeat. People said Nick Walker is going to win. People said and nobody picked Hadi Choopan to win. The only guy who picked Hadi Choopan to win is Bob Cicherillo. I got to give him credit. And he's already cocky, arrogant. You know, he's like out of control since then. But Bob, the time has come where you're going to look at the camera and make your pick of who is going to win the Mr. Olympia. You can't change. And I give you credit. You never changed last year. People made fun of you, and you never changed. So whoever you said now publicly has to be until the end of the year.
Okay.
Let's go with it.
All right. Listen, easy call, bro. I'm not changing my stance from earlier in the season. I called it first, and I called it right. And your new Mr. Olympia will be Samson Dauda.
Cool.
All right.
The chips, now let me qualify that, okay? Not taking anything back, but let me qualify it. One,
Bob,
hang on a second. Hang on.
Asterisks, yeah.
No, there's no asterisks. I'm explaining my decision, okay?
Let's hear it.
I'm explaining my decision, Terrick. Hang on now, all right? This isn't asterisks, okay? This is just qualification of the pick, all right? Samson Dauda, all the chips are in his hands. He has, not even arguably, if you know bodybuilding, he has the best physique out there, structure-wise, shape-wise, proportion-wise. He checks every box that there is to check. The only box that's a little gray area is conditioning. We've seen it last year when he was 6, and he improved 5% to that Arnold, and I put him in the winner's circle. All right, if he improves 5% more, and I've said this again months ago, we can check the tapes, he will be your new Mr. Olympia, because Hadi does not have the shape or structure, symmetry, and all that kind of good stuff. He's towering above these guys. I think Andrew Jack possibly has a chance. I think he's still got some work to do, but in his short career, he's very good, and he's a big boy, and he really brings it up there. Listen, I can't count out, Hadi from showing up and all that stuff, but the fate of Samson is in Samson's hands. There is no defense in bodybuilding. If Samson comes in 100%, he wins, and I think he wins, I don't want to say easily at the Olympia, but I think he wins decidedly at the Olympia if he nails it.
Can't disagree with that.
Very cool. Very cool. Ian Valliere, I want to thank you for spending some time with us. I think your outspoken personality is awesome. Everybody is a huge fan of yours. You're one of the huge guys that has no problem containing your abdominal section. That's a huge advantage for you. Your side chest is awesome, and people love you. I commend you for being who you are, and I'm going to tell you, okay? Look straight into my eyes, young man. You are the greatest Canadian bodybuilder of all times. I will say this in front of Paul Dillette. I will say this in front of Bob Cicherillo's best friend, Fouad Abiad. Ian Valliere is the best Canadian bodybuilder of all times. Thank you so much for being part of the live. We're going to be back next weekend with more competitors. Thank you so much, Ian.
Awesome. Thanks for having me, guys. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Bob. I will see you later.
You got it, brother.
Take care. Bye-bye.